when I ring our bell, I want us to just reflect on our gratitude for being fortunate to live in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland and Aotearoa Unitarians. Tēnā koutou ngā manahiri no mai, haere mai ki tēnei hui, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia
ora.
With an election before us, I thought this Sunday and next is a good time to focus on our fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Of all of our principles, this one, the right to use one's own conscience and to make use of the democratic process, may go to the heart of the problem of being human in community than any other. Of course, all seven principles arise out of a deep and wide tradition of progressive religion, but this one speaks to what I consider a particularly difficult situation. The tension between the freedom of the individual and the obligation that we all have to create a just society. The power to engage my own conscience implies the power and freedom of me as individual. Yet the very word conscience implies a kind of knowing that we have together as human beings. It is mine, and yet it is born of us all. The democratic process implies a communal way of making choices, of establishing law and order, of providing for equality in society. And yet too often, the democratic process is reduced to two sides pitted against each other, with a winner emerging with only 51% of the vote. Too often we end up more wounded and estranged from each other because of the democratic process we practice than united because of it. I'm going to now share with you the hymn number 318, We Would Be One. And now it's time for us to light our virtual chalice. These are words by Gregory David Miller. This fire is a reminder of the light within us all, the yearning for freedom, the flame of intuition, the torch of conscience. We dedicate this service to the remembrance of this holy light. And our holy light is reflected in our singing of Spirit of Life. Compared to what is going on in the US, our election season is not filled with much drama or suspense, thanks Spirit of Life. Polls suggest that the current government will get another term. The only question is, will Labor be able to govern alone, or will they need a coalition partner? What suspense there is surrounds the two referendums on the ballot. Considering that each has the potential to be transformational, they have not had nearly the airtime of the political decisions most Kiwis seem to have already made. So on these last two Sundays before the election, I've decided to devote our time together to the referendum questions. Today, I am seeking to create space for each of us to inform our conscience by hearing and sharing our common wisdom during an extended breakout session about the Canada's referendum. I've struggled with how much to share my own views, with the knowledge that in spite of all appearances, this is not a binary choice. I understand we will all have experiences and reasons for our ultimate decision. I've decided to share some of mine that inform my conscience. During the breakout, I encourage you to share yours. As a child of the 60s, I experimented with marijuana exactly 3 times while at university. The last time made me ill. It was a rite of passage for my generation, and contrary to Clinton, we all inhaled. Since then, my preferred recreational vice was red wine, or a good single malt if I could afford it. But for 6 years, I ran very large residence halls of more than 1,000 students at 2 different universities. And for 4 more years, I was responsible for all residence life at George Washington University. My staff and I used to joke we could get a contact high just walking the hallways. To this day, I find the smell objectionable. During that time, vandalism, violence, and vomit were due solely to alcohol use. Loud music was the only sin of the stoners. During that time, there were several occasions where I sent students by ambulance to the hospital, deathly ill from severe alcohol abuse. I never had a similar experience with a student who had been smoking weed. After my move from higher education to ministry, I had little direct experience. If I had liked cannabis, I chose the wrong faith group. I should have become a Rastafarian. But as someone dedicated to social justice, I had a problem with US drug laws and still have a problem with the war on drugs. They were not applied equitably. People of color were disproportionately sent to prison for marijuana use. As people of color are disproportionately represented as living at or below the poverty line, they could afford marijuana to relax when they could not afford a single malt, making them an easy target. Criminalizing its use is clearly an example of systemic racism. Sadly, the situation is similar in New Zealand. About 50% of our prison population is Maori, when they only represent just over 16% of the population. A significant percentage of that population have been incarcerated for cannabis use. In my experience, our drug enforcement efforts would be better served if directed towards those who sell meth, opioids, and synthetic cannabis. We should provide treatment for those who are addicted, remembering addiction is an illness, not a crime. Lastly, these laws have a destructive impact on young people of any color. When I was at St. Matthew's, I assisted a young white South African immigrant. He was seeking permanent residence here. He was being denied his request because as a teenager in South Africa, he was arrested once for cannabis use. We finally convinced Immigration New Zealand he was not a risk and would be an asset to our country. But if we had failed, he would have been deported along with his wife and child. That is how my life experience is influencing how I will vote. I want now to play a video that will detail the issues behind the referendum. I searched for quite a while to find something informative that was not advocating for a specific outcome and which might be a little bit entertaining. Radio New Zealand posted a video that met those requirements. I'll play it for you now. Well, my hope is that you now have enough material to discuss the multitude of issues in the breakout and bring our common wisdom forth to inform our conscience. And it's mostly about, what are the things from your own life that make you think about this issue? If you know the words, join me in extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. For my closing words by Robert Kaufman. We have come together to share our deepest concerns, speaking and singing words of inspiration and hope. We have committed ourselves to do what we can to ease the burdens of those who suffer, to stand for decency and compassion. We have pledged to work for a more wholesome environment for us and for all the generations that will follow. But these are just words. The hymns we sing are just songs. All our reflections are just idle thoughts. When we convert them all into loving and responsible action throughout the week, then and only then will this morning become what we want it to be, a time of worship. And we'll close with our postlude.